Have you ever wondered why some people seem to achieve incredible success, while the rest of us struggle through failures and challenges? What if I told you that the stories of success you admire may not be as true or as complete as they appear? Stay with Soul Stories World, because today, we'll uncover the truth behind the shiny tales of success and why you should never trust them blindly. Bill Gates, Jack Ma, Steve Jobs, or other examples of success who rose from nothing may tell you fascinating, philosophical things about success. But if you want to stay clear-headed and truly become like them, the first thing you should do is cover your ears and not listen to what they say. You don't need to look only at world-famous names like Bill Gates, Jack Ma, Steve Jobs, or Mark Zuckerberg. In our everyday lives, we've probably grown tired of hearing countless stories of other people's children who dropped out of school, quit their jobs, or left the city to return to the countryside and start a business making billions, or those who sell cosmetics online and receive revenue bonuses worth tens of billions, or startup founders who succeed and own million-dollar companies. Keywords like success, passion, breakthrough, and billions make people feel inspired and ignite new ambitions. But when we've been knocked down, or when we feel exhausted after years of struggling only to face bitterness and hardship, we start to realize that maybe something is very wrong. That is also the moment you begin to learn your first lessons about where to place your trust. In life, don't place all your trust in shiny success stories. And now, let me tell you why we cannot blindly believe in other people's stories of wealth and success. If you've ever read the novel 20s Girl by Sophie Kinsella, you may remember a rather amusing detail in the book. When the author describes a so-called get-rich speaker, he traveled around giving speeches that captivated the audience, asking them to hold up money and chant slogans, as if by sending their desire for wealth into the universe, they would be rewarded in return. Then came a flood of teachings and rules about how he supposedly became rich. But here's the unexpected truth. He wasn't making billions from anywhere else. The very audience who passionately put all their trust in this wealth speaker were his real source of income. He wasn't selling true experience. He was simply selling polished slogans. Our society has become too accustomed to asking, how did someone succeed? Bookstores overflow with titles listing 5, 10, or 20 steps you must take to become rich. But eventually, you'll realize that behind those pretty words often lie countless conspiracies or untold truths that no one ever mentions. How did someone actually succeed? Once, I was editing an interview with a young entrepreneur working in a rather interesting and new field. Yet one crucial question remained unanswered, so I asked a colleague to dig deeper. Specifically, how did this young person raise capital? Because, as everyone knows, the most important thing in starting a business is finding angel investors, people willing to put money into your project. In the end, the truth came out. This young person's family was very wealthy, and they had invested heavily to help their child start a business. But the entrepreneur asked us not to include that detail in the article. Reasoning: if readers see this, it might discourage other young people who also want to start their own businesses. This reminded me of something I once read about Donald Trump. When he was in his energetic 20s, he declared he wouldn't rely on his family and would start his own business. But in reality, he began with a loan of around $14 million from his father, plus another $9 million later on when times got tough. Now, this doesn't mean that the young entrepreneur, Trump, or anyone else who started with family fortune isn't talented. Of course they are. That's not the point. What I mean is this: if you've never been a reporter or an editor, you would never know what gets left out of these glossy success stories. that make the world swoon in admiration. If I hadn't happened to edit that interview, or if Donald Trump hadn't run for president, forcing his opponents to dig up his real profile, then these facts might never have been written down. And here is the last reason why you should not blindly believe in shiny success stories. Our society has not yet learned how to view failure. For most people, failure simply means losing. Mark Cuban once wrote in one of his books, "It doesn't matter how many times you fail. All you need to do is learn from them and from those around you." Because in business, the most important thing is that one time you succeed. And when that happens, people will say how lucky you are. Every successful person has failed, sometimes many times. It's not that we don't know this. In fact, the world is already full of rags to riches, riches to rags stories. But just like in marriage, most of us are asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, "How great are you?" we should be asking, "How crazy, how unbearable, how much hardship are you capable of enduring?" In our jobs and careers, most of us ask, "Can I be as successful as that person?" When what we should be asking is, "Can I survive the failures that person had to endure?" For example, if you want to be like Mark Cuban, the billionaire businessman, film producer, and owner of an NBA team, you have to be sure you can live through the times he himself described. "I came home and the room was pitch dark because I didn't even have enough money to pay the electricity bill." That was both a huge source of motivation and an unforgettable shame. If you dream the dream of a billionaire, you must be prepared for the reality of living for many years like a beggar in the slums. That is reality. So in life, never be too quick to believe anyone. There's an experiment like this. Put 5 bees and 5 flies into the same glass bottle. Then place the bottle sideways with the bottom facing a window. What happens? The 5 bees will keep flying toward the bottom of the bottle, trying desperately to reach the light, believing that's the only way out. They continue until they're exhausted, starve, and die. The flies, on the other hand, don't care about the light. They simply look for any way to escape. They buzz around in all directions, and before long, some of them accidentally find their way out through the bottleneck. The explanation is simple. Bees, drawn to the light and convinced that the way to freedom must be toward brightness, actually doom themselves. Flies, indifferent to light and focused only on escaping, stumble upon the right path. This experiment conveys a message. If you cling too rigidly to what you think you know, you may be destroying yourself. Now, this may sound confusing. Isn't persistence a good thing? But isn't flexibility also good? Isn't it good to be a principled person, but also to know how to adapt? So, what's the right answer? The truth is, balance is what matters. Moderation is key. In life, there is no absolute. If you had to fear one of 2 kinds of people, those who are knowledgeable but overly stubborn, or those who are less informed but willing to adapt, you should fear the first type more, because people who are too rigid are often the hardest to talk to. They carry strong prejudices, label everything and everyone. You'll find them difficult to deal with, either because they're too proud to accept another viewpoint, or because they judge too quickly and categorize you into a box, too heavy with bias or too shallow in perception. They may discard something hastily because they've labeled it as trash, or cling tightly to an idea just because they believe it's right. Trusting others can already be dangerous, but few people realize we can also be deceived by ourselves. That's why once you become someone who is too unshakably certain of yourself, others will stop opening new doors for you. They will stay silent or quietly walk away. If we imagine the experiment as a movie, we'd see the bees frantically throwing themselves at the bottom of the bottle, never hearing the calls of the flies. Even when all the flies have escaped, the bees wouldn't care. The truth is, figuring out where to place your trust is one of life's hardest equations. Today you may believe in something completely, only to have it all collapse painfully tomorrow at a sudden turn in life. The only anchor you can truly hold on to is relativity, the pursuit of balance in everything. Too much doubt isn't good, but always leave room for other possibilities. Never let yourself be trapped by someone else's story, or even by your own certainties. At the end of the day, success is never as simple as it looks from the outside. Don't just copy the highlight reels of others. Focus on your own journey, learn from failures, and find the balance that truly matters. Thanks for watching Soul Stories World. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have your own story to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment. We'd love to hear it. See you in the next video.